Hey YouTube, this is Wrestling Amusement Park Fan 62. Um, Now, like I mentioned in the Triple H worst to best rehire video at the end of the video when I was talking about Bray, why I want to talk about him in particular in this video and his cool creative mindset he has had come up with these characters while he's been in WWE. He's been several different characters. So I want to talk about it. First, he was Husky Harris. Now, this is back when you had the Nexus, I think it was. I may be wrong on that one, but and so there wasn't too much to that. So then he went back to square one, and he came up with like a cult leader type gimmick. Um, I, I I have to go back and see who that person was who inspired him to do it. But that was kind of a neat thing to do because he every time he would come to the ring or even a promo or something, he would always wear like a Hawaiian type shirt with a small hat. And it was kind of a neat thing because he would let his beard grow out and then he would always talk in like a southern type accent. So I, so he did these really cool vignettes and promos. You can actually find them on WWE's YouTube channel, but you really have to look through it. Where he talked about the person we will later become known as the Fiend, which I'll get to in a minute. And so it was a really cool thing to hear him talk about it because it talked about how he had like yellow eyes and stuff like that. Um, but then too, even during certain type of matches, it was kind of neat because they would start having stuff you wouldn't think about. WrestleMania 33, I think it was. Um, he was having a match versus Randy Orton, and like it was like bugs showing on the mat. So it was stuff like that. That was kind of neat. And then we get into what he has known as the Fiend. This was a cool thing because it was something you really don't see much in wrestling as a whole. Because the Fiend was this character who basically had this ungodly strength. He would play mind games with you and so forth. And the entrance for him was really cool because they had the band Code Orange basically do a remix of Bray's original theme. And it was kind of neat because it was one of these things where it was you just I would one of the things I would highly suggest is go back and look at the entrance of the Fiend, um, especially during the Thunderdome era, because that was kind of a neat thing too. But in my opinion, one of the best entrances that he had was his debut at SummerSlam 2019 when it was in Canada, because you didn't have all this fancy lights, doing like a strobe light effect and stuff. It was just you heard the music and then he just like um, a strobe light blinking on him as he walked down, and that's all. And then during the Thunderdome, it was neat because it was like it's sort of like Randy Orton's with certain parts of his theme where it would blink, you'd have the strobe lights. It'd be like that as well. And the other thing too that I liked about the Fiend as well is how Bray as a whole would be sort of, he would be like a messed up version of Mr. Rogers. So he would have the Firefly Funhouse. So, he would talk to these puppets, uh, Abby the Witch, Mercy the Buzzard, Huskus the Pig, um, and then also how he got Alexa Bliss involved in this as well. It wasn't one of those, hey, would you like to join my funhouse type ordeals. This was where it was building it over time. Now, I did a video of this in the past, but I will talk about it again. This was during the pandemic, and this was when they were at the Performance Center in Florida. And it was the July. It was around one of the late July episodes of SmackDown. Uh, Nikki Cross lost a match to Bayley, so Alexa was there to support her. Nikki pushed her down out of anger, and so then you started hearing that sound of like when the lights were going dim, and so then you heard that sound with the Fiend, and so then the lights turned red, and then the Fiend was beside her, like feeling her, and then he did a mandible claw down on her. And so the cool thing I like that they did was the slow, twisted version of Alexa. So at any time people would mention the word the Fiend, Alexa would go into like this trance where she would just be looking, um, and then you don't know where she's going until someone snaps her out of it. And so the cool thing is she started to get this more almost like an obsession with him. And so she would look at like a TV in the backstage when he would have a match or something like that. And it was a really cool thing to see. So then when they went to the Thunderdome, this is sort of where it got better because in September, um, oh, no, it wasn't until October, I'm sorry, till she had her first entrance with the Fiend. So, in fact, it's one of my favorite videos to look at on here. It's like you see her in the ring with the red lights, um, and she's like, Monday Night Raw, he's here, ha ha ha. And then the lights do that, then you see the Fiend coming down. Now, that was one of the cool things. And then when the Fiend had his feud with Randy Orton going into TLC 2020, this is uh, where it started to get very cool because of the mind games that um, he would she would play with Randy Orton. I forgot who Randy Orton was having a match with at the time, but in the Thunderdome, like all the screens went to like her laughing. He Randy Orton would cough up this like black goo, and it was just a bunch of stuff like that. And it was a cool thing because you just don't know what was going to happen weekly with that sort of thing. Now, going into WrestleMania 38, basically the first WrestleMania with fans, um, so they were still continuing the feud, the Fiend versus Randy Orton. So basically, for a good 2 months, I would say. It was basically Alexa versus Randy in it. So Alexa was playing all these mind games with Randy, and then at Payback 2021 in the Thunderdome, um, the Fiend reemerged. Um, it was like basically what I like to call a crispy version of the Fiend, and that was kind of a cool thing to see. Um, so that had a lot to do with it going into WrestleMania. So then the Fiend's entrance was cool because he came out of like this satanic looking box. Um, and then the part two where you're kind of like, what is when Alexa turned on the Fiend, but that's another story for another day. So now, basically, after that, after WrestleMania, they did not have plans for Bray Wyatt, so he just kind of stuck around. And then in late July of 2021, it was announced that WWE basically gave him the axe. So that was kind of a, and then I would have to say, I think it was right after Clash of the Castle, you started noticing all these teasers for the White Rabbit, and then apparently on Raw and SmackDown, and even at house shows, they would play this song. I'm not sure what the song was called, um, kind of promoting it. So that is Bray through the years. Um, so, and then now we've met a character named Uncle Howdy. We still don't know much about him. And so I am curious how this is going to go. So we will have to see.